Welcome to the Texas Instrument TI-83 and TI-84 tutorial for beginners. Many students are going to be using these calculators in the classroom for the first time or have used them very little and probably would like to have a better understanding of exactly what the capabilities are and how those can be actually used in the classroom. So that's the purpose of this video, and we're going to go through some very basic functions of the calculator. We're going to look at some things like how to turn it on, how to turn it off, and how to reset back to factory and so forth. So let's go ahead and take a look at the calculator up close and let you go ahead and start getting a feel for exactly what the calculator can do and what you will need to do in order for that to take place. So what do we see when we first look at the face of the calculator? Obviously there is a keypad at the bottom, all of those buttons in white, numbers 0 through 9. There's a decimal point. There is a negative key. That's what you see in parentheses at the bottom. Just to the right of that you see your operation keys. That's your divide, your multiply, your subtract and add, with the blue enter key found at the bottom. That of course is equal, or tells the calculator to go ahead and commit, do the calculation, store, and so forth. And then you also see a bunch of other keys that can be a little bit intimidating if you're not used to using all these different functions. And let's make sure you understand that you won't use every function on the calculator. You will probably need to get to know your calculator in terms of how do I turn it on, how do I turn it off, what are the so-called secondary functions, those are the functions that are listed above the keys. What's the difference between delete and clear and quit and so forth. We're going to look at those one at a time. And then finally you have something called the memory reset, which is that emergency button you use if your calculator no longer functions. Okay, what do I do to get it back to the way it was when I first took it out of the packaging? And that's what the memory reset will do. The most basic function of the calculator, and the one that you need to know the most to get started, is how to turn the calculator on and how to turn the calculator off. There is an on button at the bottom left. Now I'm going to refer to this as column 1 and then row 1 at the bottom. By depressing the button you can turn the calculator on, but in order to turn the calculator off manually you'll have to first of all hit the second button, which is in that first column. It is a yellowish gold button at the very top, followed by the on key, and of course that produces something called a second function. Second function, once again, is a function that occurs by depressing the second button first, followed by a button on the calculator, and the particular function involved is the one written just above the button. It's important for you to know the difference between closely related commands on the calculator, and I'm going to pick the example here of the clear button that you see in red versus the delete button, which you see in blue. Of course they're not going to be red and blue on your calculator, but just red and blue on the video that you see here. The clear button will be used anytime you want to completely remove an entire group of characters from a screen. That means an entire line, for example. Whereas the delete button, as is the case on your computer, will only remove one character at a time, and your cursor, your darkened area, will always need to be preceding or on that character. And there is a big difference. If you only want to remove one character, you hit delete. If you want to remove an entire series, hit clear. And I've seen students many times use these incorrectly and be very upset after they've done it, so we don't want you to do that. You also have a quit button. The purpose of the quit button is to get you out of a menu, because you're going to have file menus here just like you do on your computer once again, and hitting the clear or hitting the delete is not going to get you out of that screen. It's not going to remove anything. You're just going to be sitting there saying, okay, what do I do to get out of here? And what you're going to do is you're going to hit the mode key, but you're going to hit the second button first because this is a secondary function. Second mode is quit, and then once you are out of that screen and you go back to a home screen, or what I call a home screen, that is not under a file menu, just on a regular screen, you can use clear or delete to remove any other characters that might still be hanging around on that home screen. Now you'll also want to know about the navigation keys, because the navigation keys, the left and the right and the up and the down, that is the west, east, north, south, are going to allow you to move the cursor around inside of a menu or on a graph later as we learn how to graph. Let's go ahead and look specifically at a couple of file menus that are going to be found in the calculator. Your file menus are not normally seen and will only be revealed when you access them by either using a particular button or a second function for a button. I'm going to start with the mode function, or the mode file menu. You can see I've got that highlighted in red. If you'll go ahead and depress that button right now, it's going to reveal for you a screen that's going to give you some different options that are available on the calculator. You may not use all of these options, but I want you to understand exactly where these options are. Depending upon the class you're in, you're going to need to be able to have your calculator either in a normal mode, a scientific notation mode, or an ing mode. You may or may not even know what those are right now, but that's okay. Do you want the decimal to float? Do you want it to round? I mean, do we want to go ahead and just say, calculator, don't round anything for me, let me round on my own? Or do we want to set it at round to the nearest whole number, to the nearest tenth, to the nearest hundredth? If I were taking a trigonometry class, I would need to know if I wanted the measure of my angles in radians or degrees. There are other function modes other than just the y equals. You have the parametric and the polar and the sequential. Okay, there's a lot here, granted, but just make sure you understand that even though you won't use all of these, and you may use very few of these, there will be some times when you're going to want to change certain aspects of the calculator and the way it reacts, and this would be the place that you would want to go. So in order to access the file menu that we refer to as the mode of the calculator, we simply go to the mode key, and then we can use our navigation buttons, which were those arrows left, right, up, and down, and we can move up and down along this menu and make some decisions. Now, we also want to go ahead and look at another secondary function, and this is the one specifically that is for the memory of the calculator. We access that by, once again, depressing the second button, followed by the plus sign in this case, as that represents the memory menu. And of course you can see here it's got some choices about, that just kind of describes the calculator for you. It talks about memory management and deletion, clearing entries, clearing lists, but notice I've got reset highlighted. I thought this one was pretty important because students have come in to me before and they've said, my calculator doesn't work and I don't know what to do. I was home all weekend long and I couldn't get it to do anything. And if they have the option of resetting their calculator, then they can undo any kind of a change that occurred that might have been an accident, by the way. It could have been a child could have been playing with the calculator, or it could have been an adult was playing with the calculator and didn't know what they were doing. And in that process, they somehow suddenly made some changes, and now they don't know how to change them back. So reset's very important. Once you go in to this memory menu, which was second and plus, and you go down to reset and you enter. Now you can either punch the number 7 on your keypad, or you can just go ahead and hit enter when this is highlighted. We can move down there with our navigation key. Then it's going to give you some options. See, the calculator is always going to react very, very much like your computer does. It doesn't really want you to mess anything up. It wants to make sure you know what you're doing. And so if you go ahead and you press number 7 or you enter while your cursor is on number 7, you're going to be revealing a new screen. Let me say quickly, however, do not do that right now. Don't hit number 7. Do not hit enter. Resetting the calculator probably is not going to bother anything on your calculator. However, if you have programs that are stored, resetting the calculator is going to remove those programs. It's going to take out anything that's already previously been stored. So we only use reset if it's absolutely necessary. What we're going to do next is to show you at least one example of why this calculator is going to be very, very valuable to you. You know, this is like the teaser. This is the one that usually gets most people. If you've had difficulties in the past working with fractions, whether it's reducing fractions, adding, subtracting, multiplying, or dividing, you're going to find this calculator is absolutely going to be your math savior, because it's going to be able to do all of that for you. I'll take a simple example. First of all, 45 divided by 120, which is the same thing as the fraction 45 over 120. Let's say we wanted to reduce this. Probably not a very difficult thing here. Probably you can see the greatest common factor, or then again maybe you cannot. But the calculator is going to be able to take this fraction, it's going to change it into a decimal form, then it's going to turn around and change it back into a fraction again, and that resulting fraction is always going to be in simplest form. So if you haven't done so already, let's go ahead and exit out of our memory screen. That is, go ahead and hit clear. Remember, the clear button is on the far right hand side in the last column, and it will take you back to a home screen. If that's not blank, hit clear again. And then let's put into your calculator, using your keypad, 45 divided by 120 and enter. As soon as you get that result, 45 divided by 120, you will see, after pressing enter, it gives you 0.375, which is the decimal equivalent of 45 1/20ths. And that can now be changed back into a fraction. The calculator has the capability of going from fraction to decimal and decimal to fraction. Fraction to decimal is just simply divide the fraction out. But if you want the calculator to actually change that decimal 0.375 back into a fraction in its simplest form, in its reduced form, and 45 over 120 is not reduced, then you're going to need to locate what's called your math menu. Now, you have a math button in the first column. If you'll go ahead and find that, it's just below the second and the alpha key, and to press that, then it's going to reveal another screen for you called the math menu, and notice number 1 says change to fraction. Actually, it's got an arrow in fraction, but what that means is change to fraction. And you've previously taken 45 and you've divided by 120, and it's 0.375. Well, you're going to enter on change to fraction now, and as soon as you do that, it's going to take you back to that home screen, and it will display answer change to fraction. Now, when it says answer change to fraction, it means whatever the last number is on the screen, the bottom number, it's going to take that number and it's going to change it into a fraction. So it hasn't actually done that yet. We've given it the command, it's on the screen, and now we're going to go ahead and hit enter one more time, and as soon as we do that, it's going to actually make that conversion for us. You notice that it says, oh, when you change 45 1/20ths to 0.375 and then take that answer, then take that decimal and change that back to a fraction, yeah, it takes it back to a fraction all right, but it doesn't take it back to an unsimplified fraction. It takes it back to a fraction in lowest terms that is equivalent. All right, notice the power you now have. Any fraction you have, you put it in the calculator, you divide it out, you go to your math menu, you tell it to change it back to a fraction. It does that, but now it's suddenly in simplest form. You will never have to guess whether something is in simplest form. This is always going to do that for you. If what you've seen today has been helpful, I hope you'll visit me at my website, mathmyway.com, to get more of the TI-83-84 tutorial series. My name is Greg Fulton. Thanks for visiting.